Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive on a car that, well, let's just say it kind of had a thing for defying gravity. We're talking about the Citroën Xantia Activa. Now, the Xantia on its own was already pretty cool. The large family car produced by Citroën from 1992 to 2001, designed by the one and only Berkatone, and known for its super smooth hydraulic pneumatic suspension. But the Activa model, oh, that's where things get really interesting. Too, we've got a bunch of articles, historical accounts, even some marketing stuff, to really give us the full picture of this record-breaking marvel.
You know what's really cool about the Xantia Activa is how it shows Citroën's commitment to innovation, especially when it comes to suspension. I mean, they really push the boundaries there.
Yeah, when I was researching this whole thing, I was struck by how the Xantia was launched right into the heart of the family car market. It had to go up against some serious competition like the Ford Mondeo and Opel Vectra. Talk about pressure. But it seems like Citroën had learned a thing or two from the reception of the ZX. Some people felt like it was missing that Citroën quirkiness.
Right, exactly. The Xantia was their chance to bring that magic back, and they definitely did that with the Activa.
It's also interesting how the Xantia shared a platform and even some
Yeah.
engines with the Peugeot 406. But when you look at the suspension, they took completely different approaches.
Ah, yes, the tale of two siblings going their separate ways. It really shows how Citroën wanted to stand out, offer something truly unique. And speaking of standing out, that's exactly what the Activa did. I mean, it could corner with basically no body roll. It's like watching a cheetah change direction. Pure agility.
It is remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to pull off that no-body roll magic, they created the SCCR system. That stands for Système Citroën de Contrôle Actif du Roulis. Basically, it uses a network of sensors, hydraulic cylinders, and active cross-stabilizers, all working together to counteract the forces that make a car lean when you're going around a corner.
So if I'm picturing this right, it's like having an invisible hand gently pushing the car upright as you're taking a bend. No drama, just pure grip and stability. You got it. And this technology wasn't just talk, it actually delivered. In fact, the Xantia Activa V6 with that powerful 3.0-liter engine still holds a pretty impressive record.
Are you talking about the famous moose test? The one where you have to swerve to avoid like an actual moose? Even watching videos of that test gets me nervous.
It's a test that can make anyone sweat. But the Xantia Activa aced it. It reached a record speed of 85 kilometers per hour while staying in complete control. And these weren't just some casual tests. These were done by Teknikens World. They're a Swedish automotive magazine known for their really tough standards.
Wow, 85 kilometers per hour. That's
Yeah.
incredibly fast for a move like that. And there's this TikTok video that went viral comparing a 1996 Xantia Activa to a 2021 BMW M4 competition in the moose test.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one. It's amazing to watch the Xantia, a car from the mid-90s, just glide through the course at 73 kilometers per hour without hitting a single cone. And then the BMW has to slow down to only 29 kilometers per hour, and it still knocks over 3 cones.
Talk about a win for the vintage car. It really shows how ahead of its time the Xantia Activa was. But all this incredible stability wasn't just about the suspension. The Activa also came with a range of engine options, both petrol and diesel. That's right. And if you were lucky, you could even find a rare and powerful 3.0-liter V6 version. They only made less than 2,600 of those, so they're a real collector's item these days. Ah, the appeal of something rare. But even without the V6, the Activa had some distinct features, like a rear spoiler, cool alloy wheels, and of course the Activa logo, so everyone knows what they're looking at. It's like a subtle hint at its high-performance capabilities.
You know, it's pretty amazing how the Xantia Activa crams so much innovation into a family car. It really makes you think, why hasn't active suspension caught on more? I mean, the advantages are clear, so why don't we see it everywhere?
Yeah, it's a great question. You think everyone would want a piece of that after seeing how well the Activa performed. So what's the deal? Is it just too complicated or expensive for most car makers to even bother with it?
Well, it's a few things, really. Active suspension systems are more complex by nature. Think about it. You've got sensors, actuators, control units, and in the Activa's case, that whole sophisticated hydraulic system. All of that adds to the manufacturing costs, which ends up making the car more expensive for the buyer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Car companies need a balance pushing the limits with keeping things affordable. But haven't we seen that with other tech too, like anti-lock brakes or electronic stability control?
Yeah.
Those used to be fancy features, but now they're pretty standard.
You're totally right. As tech gets better and production scales up, prices can come down. But active suspension has another problem: reliability. With all those intricate parts, there's just more that can break down. And when that happens, repairs can be a pain, both time-consuming and expensive.
Ouch, yeah, I bet that's a big worry for both car companies and people thinking about buying one.
Exactly. Consumers want a car they can rely on, and manufacturers want to avoid warranty issues and keep their reputation good. It's a tricky balance.
So it's not just about cost and how complicated it is. There's also the question of whether people even want active suspension, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some people are perfectly happy with a well-tuned regular suspension, especially if it means a cheaper car and fewer potential headaches down the line.
You've hit on another key point. It all comes down to perception and what people prefer. Some drivers might think active suspension is overkill, especially if they're not driving in a way that really needs that level of performance. And then there's the whole debate about driving feel.
Ah, yeah, the purists versus the tech lovers.
Exactly. Some people say that active suspension can make the driver feel disconnected from the road. Like you lose that sense of feedback that a lot of car enthusiasts really like.
It's a fair point. There's a certain satisfaction in feeling the road through the steering wheel and the seat of your pants.
Totally. And that's something car manufacturers have to consider carefully. It's about finding that sweet spot between innovation and meeting what drivers want.
So it sounds like active suspension has a bit of an uphill battle. But that doesn't mean it's a dead end, right? There's still some car companies out there pushing the limits of this tech.
Absolutely. Mercedes-Benz, for example, has been a big supporter of active suspension with their active body control system, or ABC for short. It's a hydraulic system that's been used in their top models like the S-Class and SL Roadster.
Oh yeah, the ABC system.
Yeah.
Didn't they have a version that could lean into corners like a motorcycle?
That's right. They called it the curve tilting function. It was designed to reduce those side forces even more and make cornering smoother for passengers.
Wow, that's thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
Are there any other car makers experimenting with active suspension?
For sure, BMW has their dynamic drive system, which uses electronically controlled anti-roll bars to keep body roll to a minimum. It's another way to achieve that same goal of better handling and stability.
It's pretty cool how different companies are approaching this challenge in different ways. And with electric cars and self-driving cars becoming more popular, I can only imagine that active suspension will be even more important in the future.
You're right. On electric cars, active suspension could be used to change the ride height to improve aerodynamics, which would have the battery last longer. And for self-driving cars, it could be key to making sure the ride is smooth and comfortable for passengers, even on rough roads.
So it sounds like active suspension still has a future. The Xantia Activa was a pioneer showing just how much potential this technology has. But before we move on, I'd like to get a better understanding of how that SC Key C system actually works. I'm a visual learner, so maybe you could use an analogy to help me get it.
Of course. Imagine a tightrope walker trying to balance on a high wire using a long pole to stay steady. If they start to lean to one side, they instinctively move the pole in the opposite direction. That's how they counteract the lean and stay balanced.
Okay, I think I get it. So the car is like the tightrope walker, the road is the tightrope, and the SCCR system is the balancing pole. Am I on the right track?
Exactly. The SCCR system uses sensors to keep track of the car's roll moment, basically how much it's leaning. Then it sends signals to hydraulic actuators. These are like little muscles that push or pull on the active cross stabilizer bars. These bars are linked to the suspension, and by changing their position, the system can stop the car from leaning and keep it level.
So it's like the system is predicting the car's movements and making changes in real time to keep everything balanced. That's pretty amazing.
Exactly. And what's really impressive is how quickly and accurately it can make these changes. That's why the Xantia Activa was able to handle those sudden turns in the Moose test so smoothly.
You know, it makes you appreciate the cleverness of the engineers who designed this system. They were way ahead of their time.
They were. The SCCR system was a real engineering marvel, and it shows Citroën's commitment to innovation and pushing the limits of car design.
And to think all of this was back in the 1990s. It's like Citroën was playing a different game when it came to suspension technology.
They were. But let's not forget that the SCCR system wasn't the only thing the Xantia Activa had going for it. It also had Citroën's famous hydroactive to second suspension, which was a technological masterpiece in itself.
Ah, yes, the high-drop pneumatic magic. We talked about it a little before, but I think it deserves more attention, especially when talking about the Activa.
For sure. The Hydroactive 2 suspension used a combination of hydraulic fluid, gas-filled spheres, and electronic sensors to create a ride that was both incredibly smooth and really responsive.
It sounds like the best of both worlds. The luxurious comfort of a high-end car with the sharp handling of a sports car.
Exactly. And it's a combination of the hydractive to the suspension and the SECR system that made the Xantia Activa so special.
It's almost like an orchestra of engineering, with each part playing in perfect harmony to create something truly unique.
That's a great way to put it. You know, it makes me wonder, what if the Xantia Activa had been released by a more prestigious brand like BMW or Mercedes-Benz? Do you think it would have gotten more recognition?
Now that's an interesting thought. Would having a different badge have changed its fate? Would people have been more willing to accept its unconventional brilliance?
It's impossible to know for sure, but it's definitely something to think about. Maybe a different brand image might have helped the Xantia Activa reach more people, and maybe it would have gotten rid of any doubts about Citroën's ability to build really high-performance cars.
It's a shame it never really got the widespread praise it deserved. But for those who know, the Xantia Activa is a legend. It's a symbol of Citroën's bold spirit and their dedication to pushing the boundaries of car engineering.
Absolutely. And its legacy continues not just among enthusiasts, but also in how active suspension technology is still being developed. We're seeing more and more modern cars using these innovations, all thanks to pioneers like the Xantia Activa.
It's inspiring to see how a car that dared to be different led the way for future advancements. So the next time you see a car that seems to glide through corners, remember the Xantia Activa. And remember the groundbreaking technology that made it possible. You know, while a Xantia Activa was an amazing piece of engineering, it wasn't just a sudden burst of innovation. It was actually part of a much bigger story, a story that's woven into Citroën's identity.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about the Xantia Activa and all its amazing tech, but you're right. We can't forget that this car wasn't just a random thing. Citroën has always been about doing things differently, taking risks, and their whole approach to suspension really shows that.
Right. The Xantia Activa was building on what came before it, There were some truly iconic Citroëns that really changed how we think about ride comfort and handling.
Okay, so let's go back in time.
Yeah.
Where does this whole Citroën suspension story begin?
Well, you got to go all the way back to the 1950s, to a car that looked like something from outer space but rode like a dream. The Citroën DS. The DS. More than just a car, it's a design icon. And I remember reading that its hydropneumatic suspension was totally groundbreaking.
It was revolutionary. They combined hydraulic fluid and compressed gas to create a suspension that was so smooth, self-leveling, and surprisingly agile. It was like nothing else out there.
And didn't it even have that feature where you could raise and lower the car?
Yeah.
So you could change a flat tire without needing a jack? Talk about practical.
Exactly. That feature really showed how clever and versatile hydropneumatic suspension could be. And, the DS wasn't just a one-time thing. Citroën kept improving and developing this technology in their later models.
Like the Citroën SM, right? That sleek Grand Tourer that handled like it was defying physics.
Exactly. The SM was another example of Citroën pushing the limits. They used hydropneumatics to get this unique blend of performance and comfort. And then there was the CX, the car that followed the DS. It refined the system even more, adding things like speed-sensitive steering and self-leveling headlights.
It's amazing how Citroën just kept innovating, taking these ideas and pushing them further with each new car.
They were true pioneers. And in many ways, the Xantia Activa was the result of all that experience, that constant drive to innovate. It took hydropneumatics and active suspension to a whole new level.
And even though it might not be as famous as some of its predecessors, it's definitely a big part of Citroën's legacy. It reminds us that they weren't afraid to break the mold and push the limits of car engineering.
I totally agree. And it makes you wonder, why do these cars like the Xantia Activa still fascinate us even after all these years? Why are people still looking for them, restoring them, and driving them with so much passion?
Good question. I think it's more than just nostalgia. These cars have a certain spirit, a sense of wonder and excitement. They represent a time when car makers were willing to take chances to try something truly different.
They weren't just building cars, they were creating experiences, challenging the way things were done, and inviting drivers to be part of something special. And I think that's what still appeals to people even today. That feeling of connection, of being part of a legacy of innovation.
Well said. It's that something special that turns a car from just a machine into a work of art, a testament to human creativity and the pursuit of excellence.
Exactly. And on that note, we've come to the end of our deep dive into the amazing world of the Citroën Xantia Activa.
A huge thank you to everyone for joining us on this incredible journey through car history. We hope you enjoyed the ride and maybe learned something new along the way. And don't forget, there's a new episode of Vintage Car Chronicles waiting for you every day on Spotify. So make sure to subscribe and join us again soon for another exciting deep dive into the world of classic cars quarter.